So in green woodworking, we usually start with a log, but this is a bit too big to just start carving straight into a spoon. So the quickest and best way to get it down to size would be to split it. We tend to call those pieces that we split out billets, and it's from a billet that we would carve a spoon. And I find myself using thicker and thicker billets when actually I could get away with probably using billets that are much thinner. So, as a bit of deliberate practice, I'm going to try and work with thinner and thinner billets and still get a spoon with a decent crank out of it. I'm hoping this deliberate practice will help with two things. One, it will show me just how thin a billet I can actually work with, and two, because I'm going to be using thinner billets, it will help me with my accuracy with my axe work. Alright, let's get to it. We're going to start with this billet. This is probably about the thickness that I should use, really, I guess. I've been using thicker billets than this. This is 23 mil, so just over 2 centimeters thick. I think this is a nice thickness. Get a nice little cranky eating spoon out of. I know this shouldn't be too much of a problem, but nice little warm up. Get me started. That, I'd say, pretty nice spoon blank. Easy peasy. 1.5 centimeters, like 13 mil, got 1 centimeter. Okay, let's see how it goes. The 1.5 centimeters. It feels thin. A lot less effort with a thinner billet in this orientation. Probably do this with a knife. And now the tricky bit. Let's put the crank in. Not too shabby. That's that. Axing it out in this orientation is fine. Didn't get much crank out of it. So what I'm going to try and do is axe a crank straight into the billet, which isn't how I usually go about doing it. Let's try it that way and see if we can squeeze out a little extra crank. Stop cut. Putting in your crank, ideally you want to remove hardly any material on the top from the front and the back, and having it taper in down towards the deepest section of the bowl. Yeah, with these thinner billets, I feel like I'm slower because I've got to be more careful. Well, the nice thing is with eating spoons is that they tend to be super shallow, so not having a lot of meat in the bowl isn't too much of an issue. Oh, went off at a bit of an angle there. Great. Not too bad, we've got a little bit of a rise up. Yeah, that's not too bad for crank. It takes a little more than what I managed the first time. Let's keep going, see where we get.
learned from that last blank. Let's axe in the crank first. It's good practice to get rid of the bark because it can kind of throw your eye off. Got a bit of a twist for these uneven split there, so a bit annoying. I feel like this one had a little bit of crank in it already, just naturally. Win. Just keep checking to make sure there's no twists through it. We're looking pretty even. Let's work on the underside now. You know what? That does feel like got more crank out of that. But, I mean, it was only 2 mil thinner than the other one. I think that's pretty good. A little spoon blank. So thin that knife work's super simple. Okay, the 1 centimeter thick billet now. Not super confident about getting anything out of this. So I don't think I'm going to get much more. Getting more of a crank than I thought I'd be able to. Got a lump there. Go away, the lump. Carve it to the line, right to the line. Okay, it's a bit messy. Okay, so that was interesting. The blank that was the kind of comfortable thickness, 23 mil thick. Yeah, that was fine. I'm gonna have to remove a little bit of material from the bottom, so that kind of shows that that blank had a bit of wiggle room in it. It did make the process a little more enjoyable, it was more comfortable. So I knew I could potentially make a mistake and still have enough material to correct it. And then made a bit of a jump, so what, like 15 mil. The first one where I axed out to the profile and then put the crank in. I mean, with a little extra work, it'll probably be alright. Some of this grain tear out from the split is kind of deep, so it'll be interesting to see what will happen with that. But the other one, where I carved the crank in first. One turned out alright. Kind of sweet little spoon. Not much crank though on that one. Yeah. And then 13mm. Not super happy with that. Very flat spoon, in my opinion. But then ironically, like the 10mm one, like I'm more happy with it. Probably because it was just a centimetre thick. And I've still managed to get a bit of crank out of that. And I prefer spoons, a little crankier. So here are some easy spoons for me. I think that kind of amount of crank, quite like that. I think that's a comfortable kind of angle to hold, to eat with. Yeah, quite far off that. My comfy one. Yep, I kind of basically carved that amount of crank in there. Seems to be what I do. 15mm. That one's not far off. Pretty good actually. Could be a shallower bowl than this one. Yeah. 13mm. Yeah, you can see how straight that is in comparison. There's still a bit of crank in it, but 10mm. Where are you? Yeah, so much better. But still, I'm impressed that I managed to get a little bit of crank out of that bad boy. So yeah, I think that seeing as the 23mm one was pretty comfortable, that blank that I started with was still a little bit thinner than what I've kind of been working with recently. I reckon anywhere between 15 and 23mm would probably be like an okay amount to work with. So that was a fun bit of deliberate practice for me. I enjoyed just trying to push myself a little bit, working with those thinner blanks. I'm definitely gonna try and work with blanks that are a little closer to what the finished thickness of the spoon will be. Saves wood, saves time, saves effort. It will be a useful practice to get on board with. Hopefully you enjoyed this and it's inspired you to try something a bit different with your process. If you have enjoyed it, consider giving it a thumbs up. Yeah, so like and subscribe, that'd be great. Hope to see you again soon. Bye.